It's time for America Outdoors Radio, the show that covers the outdoor scene across the U.S. of A. and the entire continent. Fishing, hunting, conservation, outdoor recreation, and great destinations. We cover it all every week. It's your country, your outdoors. Let's explore it together with your host, John Cruz.
Things have changed for two of America's favorite fishing and hunting publications, Outdoor Life and Field and Stream. It's official, they are now digital magazines. No, you will not be able to turn the pages on those magazines like we all did in the not-so-old days, but I am happy to report both of these magazines have the same high-quality content as before, with the same great writers like Andrew McKean writing about the best binoculars for 2021 in outdoor life, and Dave Petzel writing in the Great Escapes edition of Field and Stream about a far northern Canada caribou hunt. There are two more stories from this Great Escapes edition. It's the latest from Field and Stream, and we've got writers joining us today on the show to go deeper into the stories they've written for this very special edition. One of those writers is T. Edward Nickens, that hunter and writer from the Carolinas who found himself on a rabbit hunt and camping trip in southern Arizona last winter. What kind of rabbits was he after amongst the cactus? Not eastern cottontail, that's for sure. No, he was after some huge bunnies called the antelope jackrabbit, not to be confused with the jackalope, and it turns out there's a bit of interesting history surrounding rabbit hunting, too. Eddie will share not only a jackrabbit hunting history lesson or two, but also the details about this really fun adventure just after the bottom of the hour. Another editor for Field and Stream we'll get to talk to today is Phil Bourgealy. His great escape wasn't far-flung. Nope, it was at the local lake gunning for green-winged teal, but he did manage to escape some family obligations during the Thanksgiving holidays to make this hunt happen, and I think you'll get a chuckle or two out of this story, and I also think you're going to want to go teal hunting too after you hear this towards the end of our program. We've got fishing for you this week, too, including the story of a Michigan teenager who went salmon fishing for the very first time and caught a new state record Chinook salmon out of Lake Michigan. Speaking of salmon, they are not only catching them in the Great Lakes right now, but they're also hooking them from Alaska all the way south to Northern California. And if you're like me, you've got a bunch of salmon fillets in the freezer just waiting to be cooked on the backyard grill or put in the smoker this summer. That's why Ryan Neely with Camp Chef will be joining us to give you some tips about how to prepare the perfect grilled or smoked salmon. Salmon are tasty fish, that's for sure, but another tasty fish, some say the best eating freshwater fish there is, well, that would be the walleye. With walleye fishing in mind, we've got Johnny Candle on the line. He's a professional walleye angler, a premier pro staffer for Max Lure, the Masters Walleye Circuit champion back in 2010. He's an on-the-water instructor, and he's a fishing guide who's been very busy lately, based out of Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Johnny, it is great to have you back on the air.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
So I was stalking you on Facebook, Johnny, and noticing that you've been out a lot, you've been catching a lot, but you've been doing it in a way that is very foreign to me. I am used to trolling spinner worm harnesses for walleye, or maybe trolling plugs or fishing jigs, but you've been fishing for walleye using bobbers and bait. Tell our listeners more about this technique.
Well, yeah, first of all, fishing a bobber for any species of fish has got to be one of the most enjoyable ways I can think of to catch one, John. It takes us all right back to our childhood. I'm going to bet 90% of those listening right now, the first fish they ever caught was below a bobber, and probably a red and white one, you know what I mean? But
yep.
Yeah, bobber fishing works great for walleye, especially when they're grouped up very tight on specific structure. And midsummer months all across the upper Midwest and all across the Pacific Northwest as well will put walleye maybe deeper, maybe shallower. Doesn't really matter with a slip bobber because the depth is adjustable, but it'll put them right on specific structure, the tops of rock piles or the very edge of a weed bed or the inside turn of some kind of transition between mud and rocks or sand. And when those fish are grouped up tightly in very specific places, The easiest way to put a piece of bait in front of them and keep it there until they eat it is to suspend it below a slip bobber. My guide clients love it. It's really easy to pick up on. You don't have to feel bites. All you have to be able to do is see a bobber disappear under the water, and you can catch as many walleye as the guy sitting next to you. It's just a great technique.
Now, what bait are you using out there?
The bait of choice for us, if you can get them, and availability sometimes can get tough, is a leech. We use ribbon leeches. They are not the blood-sucking type, so you don't have to really worry if you're a little bit squeamish about picking them up. They are very, very tasty to a walleye, I suppose, because they sure do eat them like mad. But if you can't get your hands on leeches, you can put a minnow below a bobber. Sometimes I'll break a night crawler in half. I don't like to use a whole worm below a bobber. Sometimes they just bite the tails off, but a half a night crawler will work well. And with the right conditions and a little bit of chop on the surface of the water so your bobber floats up and down, I've had fair amounts of luck with artificial baits below a bobber as well, something with a curly tail or paddle tail or even something that imitates a leech or a night crawler. As long as the bobber's moving enough to make it wiggle, there's a good chance a walleye will eat it.
And that was my next question, was manipulating that bait. So like you said, there's some chop, the water and the wind's doing it for you. If it's flat calm, are you basically twitching it a little bit to get that going?
Yeah, you can twitch that bobber a little bit, drag it a little bit, but again, you don't want to move it too far off the spot. The whole point of bobber fishing is positioning your boat, using the wind to your advantage to put those bobbers in one spot and leave them there. I know bobber fishing is pretty popular out in the Pacific Northwest in the rivers for most of the time steelhead trout, and you're drifting that bobber, right? You're throwing it upstream and letting it cover a lot of ground. We don't necessarily do that when we're fishing in a lake. We try to position the boat upwind, let the wind push our bobbers, and when we stop letting line out, that bobber's going to sit right in one spot, right over the structure holding the fish. And again, there's no better way to keep it in one place until those fish decide to eat than a bobber.
Johnny, I love talking to you because after every discussion, I always walk away with something new to put in my tackle box in terms of ideas. Let's talk about your home lake, Devil's Lake. It's obviously been fishing good this summer based on the photos I'm seeing on Facebook. But how has the drought affected things? Has it made fishing tougher, or is it just kind of a consistently good fishery right now?
Well, I can't say that it's hurt fishing, but it has definitely changed fishing. The lake is probably down 18 inches, maybe even up to 2 feet. And when water is dropping, it doesn't matter if it's a lake, a river, or a reservoir, it's going to change fish's behaviors. Our shallow water bite did not last near as long this spring as we're used to. Again, the water dropping pulled those fish away from the shore. But once we figured out where they were heading, we made a little bit sooner adjustment than normal in the fishing season and moved to the offshore sunken islands, road beds, rock piles, humps, those kind of things, and the fishing has been very consistent. The other factor, though, this year, John, has been the wildfires, and none of them are happening in North Dakota. Actually, none of them are even happening near North Dakota, but the smoke has really kept the light levels lower, and I think that's actually helped our fishing a little bit. They're very terrible instances, but you have to find a silver lining behind every cloud, and not having bright sun, which can be the enemy of the walleye, especially in clean water, has really helped keep the bite going all day long instead of just mornings and evenings.
Last question for you, Johnny. I know you're a very popular guy. Do you have any openings for September, October timeframe if any of our listeners want to book a trip with you?
Yes, actually I do. I have a couple in September, more so in October. As hunting season comes, less people focus on the fishing opportunities, which I think is a big mistake. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of fun to chase waterfowl and big game, maybe even some upland birds, but man, once October comes, there's a lot less boats on the lake, and it seems like the fish get even bigger. So if you want to plan that fall getaway, go ahead and reach out to me, and we can set you up with a trip of a lifetime.
Well, the Facebook page to go to is Johnny Candle. That's Johnny spelled Johhnnie Candle. And you can also go to his website at johnnycandle.com. He is not only a great guide, but he also is wonderful about giving you on-the-water instruction so that you will be a better angler after spending a day fishing with him. Again, JohnnyCandle.com and Johnny Candle on Facebook. Book your trip for walleye fishing at Devil's Lake. Now it's one of the best fisheries in North America. Thanks as always, Johnny.
Thank you.
The Dalles in Oregon is your base camp for fishing fun. Reel in big salmon, tangle with steelhead, bass, and walleye, or wrestle a monster sturgeon to the boat. After the day is done, you'll find a variety of lodging options around town. Need to resupply? We've got you covered with sporting goods stores plus great dining, breweries, wineries, and can't-miss attractions like the Gorge Discovery Center. Plan your fishing getaway today at ExploreTheDalles.com. That's ExploreTheDalles.com.
Why book at Sportsman's Cove Lodge?
Why is Alaska like no other place on Earth? It hasn't changed in thousands of years.
From the way you get here on a float plane to the way you go out with the guides and the boats, it's just a professional experience.
And I said, this is as good as it gets. I said, if you can't catch fish here, you can't catch fish anywhere.
Your experience with us will leave you speechless.
Book now at alaskasbestlodge.com.
Backcountry Hunters and Anglers is the voice for your public lands, waters, and wildlife. From the Canadian Yukon to the Florida Everglades, we're stepping up to conserve North America's public lands, defend our hunting and fishing traditions, and expand public access to the outdoors. Our outdoor heritage depends on sportsmen and women like you speaking up for the natural resources that sustain our way of life. Find out how you can get involved at backcountryhunters.org and become a BHA member today.
Pheasants Forever is working hard every day to ensure there's more wildlife habitat for the future. To join us, go to pheasantsforever.org.
Next up on America Outdoors Radio, we've got Ryan Neely on the line with Camp Chef. And why do we have him on the line? Because it is salmon season out there, folks. I don't care where you live along the West Coast, from California through Oregon and Washington and up to Alaska. Lots of folks are catching salmon. Lots of folks are going to cook their salmon, smoke their salmon. Ryan, it's great to have you back on the air.
Thanks, John. And by the way, that introduction makes me jealous. I'm going to be 100% transparent. I'm not on the West Coast, but I love to eat salmon. I'm out here in the Intermountain West in northern Utah. And that's one resource that I wish we had over here. But it's one of my favorites to eat, so I'm excited to talk about it.
And I know that you know how to cook salmon quite well. That's why we've got you, because I want to share some recipes, some ideas about cooking salmon on the grill and smoking salmon as well with our listeners to help them have the best meal possible. Let's start off with cooking salmon on the grill. Now, I'm going to make you more jealous here. In about 2 weeks, I am heading to Fort Casey State Park. It's on Whidbey Island in Washington State on Puget Sound. I'm going to set up my Camp Chef Pro 60 at our campsite. I'm going to go cast for pink salmon right off the beach. And any pinks that I catch, they are going to be filleted and thrown in that grill. But help me out here. How would you prepare those salmon in terms of on the grill? I know I'm going to put them on aluminum foil. I'm going to make a tent to hold that heat in. But what else should I be doing in terms of the actual recipe?
You know, salmon is almost like chicken. There's so many different ways you can cook and prepare it. I'm going to give a few tips, maybe not necessarily a solid recipe, but some of the things that I usually do with salmon. Number one, I not always, but almost always do a marinade. There's a lot of different base marinades that you can do. You can do just a basic teriyaki sauce, which is always delicious. You can do something with more of a citrus maple, maybe like a maple bourbon, brown sugar type marinade, which that's also great and delicious. Throw some limes in there if you want. Anyway, a marinade is a great base. And then on top of that, grill it. I usually grill it at medium heat. But when you're grilling, a common mistake I see is it burn the outside and raw in the middle.
Right.
Okay, so do it on a lower to medium heat so you get some good grill marks on there. But different than steak, right? A steak is so fatty on the outside that you want to get a nice sear. Fish is a lot more delicate. So that's why I'm generally grilling at a lower temperature than I would a steak. And then you want to cook it to about 145 internal temperature The reason being that way, it's not necessarily raw in the center, but any temperature that you go over that, you're just drying the meat out. You're going to dry it out more and more. So, you want to make sure it's right there at that 145 mark. If you don't have a thermometer, watch for those fats. Those omega-3 fats will start coming out of the fish. And when those start coming out, it's getting really close to done.
Oh, that's a great tip. I've always just done the whole flake method, but I love that because you're right. You do see those omega-3 acids coming out. Never knew that was time to say, hey, this salmon's about done. By the way, what are your feelings? Yeah. What are your feelings about mayo? I love to spread mayo on top of salmon when I'm grilling. It's something I learned from my dad, and I found it tastes great.
It does. That's the other thing. So along with the marinades, sauces. There's so many different sauces you could do. Here's one of my favorites. A mayo, sweetened condensed milk, and sriracha.
Ooh.
So it's kind of like a sriracha mayo, but it's sweet with that sweetened condensed milk. About 1 part each, but not quite. You can play with it a little bit to find the mixture you want. You can always do it more sweet with more of the condensed milk, or you can do it a little more hot and spicy with the sriracha sauce. Anyway, mix those three together, throw it on top, and do a teriyaki marinade. And it's probably my go-to, one of my favorites.
Oh, sounds delicious. Let's switch to smoking salmon, especially when it comes to pink salmon. If you don't grill them right away, they really should be put in the smoker. But lots of different salmon taste great smoked, whether it's Atlantic salmon or coho or even chum. And let's break it down two ways, because Camp Chef has a pellet grill, which makes smoking a salmon really quick and easy, but you also have your traditional propane smokers, the Smoke Vault. So let's start off with either way. You've got to prep that fish. You've got to have some brine on it. Let's talk through that process and then talk about using the pellet grill to smoke a salmon.
Yeah. One of my favorite ways to smoke fish, my go-to recipe or methods from a good friend, John, I know you know him, is Herb Good.
Oh, yes.
Out of Hood River, Oregon. He lives right there on the Columbia River. Great guy. Anyways, he taught me a great method for smoking salmon. It was 2 parts brown sugar, 1 part salt. And I always remembered that. And so I brine that overnight, cut that into a whole fillet, or you can put it into larger chunks. Put 2 parts brown sugar, 1 part salt, mix it up evenly, and then evenly coat that over the salmon. Brine that overnight. When you do that, you're going to pull that out of the refrigerator the next day, and it's going to be liquefied. All that salt and sugar is going to be pulling all that stuff out of the salmon, and there's going to be a lot of liquid in there. And then your salmon will be a little bit more firm, and it's ready for the smoker. So pull it out, wipe all the excess sugar and salt off, put it in the smoker. Usually at a lower temperature, I'll usually do this at about 200, maybe 225. You can go as low as 160 and smoke that until it's done, usually around 145 internal temperature.
Now, are we talking the Smoke Vault here, or are we talking the pellet grill?
You can do that on the same method for either a smoker, like a general box smoker or a stick burner, or a pellet grill. Really easy, just turn the dial and set your temperature. Either one will work. Now, as for woods, you might ask, well, what wood might I use? Fish, in general, is really light and more delicate. Salmon's not as delicate as I would say maybe like a halibut or a cod or something, or whitefish.
Right.
It's a little bit more hardy. So I generally steer away from the really hardy woods like a mesquite or a hickory or something. I'll do something a little bit lighter like an alder or a fruit tree like an apple or something.
Oh, yes.
Just because, a hard mesquite or something on a fish can be a little overbearing for me. That's my particular taste. But, do whatever, but that's kind of the way that I take it.
Well, great advice as always when it comes to prepping salmon, whether you're going to grill them or whether you're going to smoke them. If you follow this advice, you're going to have some great tasting salmon. So get out there and catch some. If you can't catch them, if you're like poor Ryan and stuck in Utah and you got to buy them, go buy some and then get it on the grill or get it in the smoker and enjoy some of the wonderful bounty that we have here in America when it comes to salmon. And if you want to find some great accessories to cook it on, just go to campchef.com. You'll find smokers, you'll find pellet grills, you'll find propane grills, and everything else you need to cook outdoors. That's campchef.com. Camp Chef products are also available in all the big box sporting goods stores and hardware stores and lots of other stores all over North America, to include independent sporting goods and ranch and home stores too. Ryan, always a pleasure, sir, to have you on America Outdoors Radio.
Thanks, John. Let's go fishing next time.
By the way, if you're going to be cleaning and filleting salmon or any other fish, you're going to need a sharp fillet knife, and that's where WorkSharp comes in. When I'm preparing fish in the kitchen, I use the kitchen combo sharpener I've got right there on my counter, and when I'm camping or in the field, I use my WorkSharp field guided knife sharpener. They both work just great to give me the sharp fillet knife I need to make short work of those fish and put some delicious salmon fillets on the grill or in the smoker. Look for these products and a whole lot more from WorkSharp at WorkSharpTools.com and at stores all over America.
Campers, adventure seekers, hunters, and foodies. No matter the lifestyle, we can all agree on one thing. Great food and great people are worth remembering. At Camp Chef, we don't just make grills. We create each product knowing that a warm meal is always better when it's shared with those we love. Learn more about Camp Chef grills, smokers, and portable cooking equipment at campchef.com. That's campchef.com for a better way to cook outdoors.
Hunting and fishing are exercises in hope. Before you head into the woods, you hope to tag out on a deer you'll have to field dress. Before you make that first cast, you hope for a big fish to clean and fillet. When your hopes are realized, you'll need a sharp knife. Whether you sharpen that blade on a power sharpener in the shop or a manual sharpener in the field, WorkSharp has the tool for you. Look for WorkSharp products in sporting goods stores near you or online at WorkSharpTools.com.
You're back in with America Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. We told you earlier in the show about Field and Stream. It's in a digital format now, but you really do need to read it. And if you go to fieldandstream.com, you can just go to the current issue. It's the Great Escapes issue. Pay $3.99, and you're going to read an edition of Field and Stream that is every bit as good as the ones you remember in print. With us today to talk about one of those great escapes is T. Edward Nickens. He's the editor-at-large for Field and Stream. He's also the author of a brand new book called The Last Wild Road. That's a collection of stories he has written for Field and Stream over the last 20 years. Eddie, it's great to have you back on the air.
Always a hoot to be with you.
So, your great escape was about an Arizona jackrabbit hunt, which is a really unique hunt. And before we get into it, I guess the first thing I want to do is talk about rabbit hunting. So most rabbit hunters in America, they're after eastern cottontails. You were after antelope jackrabbits. Why don't you describe some of the differences between the two?
The differences are huge. I mean that. I mean that literally.
Yes,
as well as figuratively. These are possibly the largest lagomorphs on the planet. I'm not a tall guy, but when I picked up an antelope jackrabbit by the tips of its ears, they reached well past my belt buckle.
Wow.
They're huge. They're giant animals. They are so much fun to spot and stalk hunt. It's like a cottontail and a pronghorn, went to a drive-in movie and showed up a few months later with these. They're incredible animals. They are extremely wary. They live in just beautiful, austere country, and they're fine to eat. Man, it was a kick, no doubt.
I understand these antelope jackrabbits can reach incredible speeds.
Yeah, they can blister, and thankfully they don't turn on the afterburners unless they really, really have to. But you figure where they live, they got to get away from coyotes. They got to get away from mountain lions in places, and certainly historically. So they can burn it up. Now, they'll typically start off with a little loping gait, and when you can cover that kind of ground with 4 feet, they don't have to burn it up. But, man, once they go. And you've got no choice but to pull your rifle down and just enjoy the show.
Let's talk about what time of year this hunt took place and where this hunt took place in Arizona.
Yeah, so we were hunting in the winter. It was in early February when we were there, winter being the coolest time of year in the Sonoran Desert. But it was still pretty warm during the day, a couple of days, short sleeves while we were stalking. At night, nice and cool weather. Exactly where we were hunting, we were precisely between Tucson and Mexico City in terms of our exact location. These animals range widely, and they're on huge private ranches. They're on big expanses of public land. Hunting in Arizona, my hunting buddy was Jonathan O'Dell, who's the small game biologist for Arizona. So we were hunting on public lands, open to the public for hunting, for camping, which is what we did, which is a lot of fun. A really big positive to this trip was the fact that we got to camp out in the desert.
Sounds like a ton of fun.
Super cool. Riding ranch roads, riding, public county roads to get to places where we would spot and stalk. It's kind of like hunting pronghorns, during the breeding season. You get to a good place, and you caporize, and you glass, and you walk, and you look, and man, it's a hoot.
Eddie, you alluded to some of the hunting you were doing with these jackrabbits. I was really taken, though, with your morning hunts. You'd camp out in the desert overnight. You'd eat breakfast, shoulder a day pack with some water, I'm sure. And why don't you talk about the morning hunts for these jackrabbits?
Yeah, the morning hunts were super cool. The sun is coming up over that low, flat desert, and what happens is when it backlights a bunny, the ears glow, 2 orange popsicles. And so it's crazy when you first see it, and you don't really know what's going on, but then you really start to key in on the rabbit's ears. And even when that doesn't happen, in the morning, these animals are sort of tucked into dense vegetation, or they got their butts up against a tree, sort of digest what they've eaten as they feed, mostly during the night, my understanding is. And so you're stalking and you're looking, and you've got this search image in your head of this big old rabbit kind of scrunched down up against a creosote or a cactus, and that's what you're looking for, because if you don't see that, what you see is the back end of a rabbit going really, really fast. So you try to catch a sight of them before that happens.
Speaking of the cactus, I think people think of southern Arizona and they always think of those classic big cactus. Is that what they were hanging out with, or was it different cactus? And I also understand you got to get very up close and personal with some cactus too.
I did indeed, and being a southern boy, I pride myself on being able to handle briars and stickers and all that kind of unpleasantries. But yeah, it was another world out there. I mean, you asked about what kind of cactus, I'll tell you, all of them, all at once. Actually, the big saguaros were a little bit of a rarity where we were, but the cholla cactus, lots of these prickly pear, just, I don't know, I would just call them either dang cactus or stupid cactus or blip, blip, blip cactus if I had to name them, but they were everywhere. Yeah, and I had one really funny episode where I got stuck in the foot, reached down, I got stuck in the hand, and you get briar in your hand when you're bunny hunting. Back home in the South, you just pull it out with your teeth.
No.
So it was a up close, personal, and kind of painful was my experiences with the cactus. Although there was one, and Jonathan told me about this one cactus, and I was eating the flowers and snacking on the flowers. I don't remember which one it was. That was kind of cool.
That is cool. Let's talk about jackrabbits as table fare. This was really a fascinating part to me in your story. You had some really interesting tidbits about how jackrabbits really made up diets for a lot of folks during the Depression, and how Jack O'Connor, one of the most famous hunting and shooting writers in the world, subsisted on jackrabbits for a time.
Yeah, Jack O'Connor was sort of known as the dean of long-range rifle shooting, and he cut his teeth sniping these jackrabbits in this very region where we were hunting. And they make for great table food. Jonathan O'Dell is literally one of the country's best wild game cooks, and he cooked rabbits in black iron skillet. He cooked jackrabbits in a hole in the ground. I don't know how he couldn't cook a jackrabbit, and they were absolutely delicious. And let me tell you, that big old rabbit is a big old pot of meat, and that's what helped a lot of these farmers and old ranching families get by in the Dust Bowl days and the Great Depression, communities would have jackrabbit drives, which is exactly what you think it is, where they'd line up across the landscape and walk these things down because that was about the only thing they had to eat.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating stuff. Folks, again, you got to check out this article. It's in the Great Escapes edition. That's the current edition of Field and Stream, and you can go to fieldandstream.com and just go to where the magazine is. It's digital now. It's not print anymore. Just pay $3.99. You can read all of this story and lots of other great ones. Before we go, though, I want to talk about your new book. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about The Last Wild Road?
Hey, for sure. Thanks for asking about that. The Last Wild Road just hit bookshelves in mid-May. Doing well. Gotten a lot of great reviews, a lot of good love from the industry. It's a collection of the best of my work in Field and Stream over the last 18 years. So we've got about 30 of my shorter essays, the total outdoorsman essays in there, and another 30 long features from Alaska to every part of the continent. I'm super excited about the book. It's a beautiful cover. And yeah, hope folks check it out. The Last Wild Road, available at Amazon, big bookstores, little bookstores, online, you name it.
Well, I'm certainly going to be picking it up because, Eddie, you are truly one of America's favorite writers when it comes to fishing, hunting, and the outdoors. And I love your adventures, and I'd like to thank you for sharing this one with us today on America Outdoors Radio.
Always happy to be here, John.
We've been telling you about Sportsman's Cove Lodge in Southeast Alaska for a while now, and there's a reason. They are the only Alaska lodge we talk about on this show. It's because they're truly Alaska's best lodge. The adventure starts with a float plane ride from Ketchikan, after which you'll get the chance to experience some of the best hospitality, food, and wonderful people you'll ever meet. Wildlife is abundant, from bears and deer to eagles and whales, and let's not forget the reason you're here, the fishing. Halibut, salmon, lingcod, rockfish, true cod, and more. It's all waiting for you in abundance at Sportsman's Cove Lodge. Book your trip today at alaskasbestlodge.com. That's alaskasbestlodge.com for Sportsman's Cove Lodge.
Ready to step up to a quality-built rifle or shotgun that's a true classic? Check out Henry Repeating Arms, American-made. There's over 200 models to choose from in a variety of finishes and calibers for hunters and target shooters. Many of these are lever-action models with a look right out of the Old West. Don't be deceived, though. Henry Repeating Arms are modern, rugged, accurate, reliable, and have a lifetime guarantee. Find out more and order a free catalog today at henryusa.com. That's henryusa.com.
We love our children. We protect them. We guide them. We prepare them for life in the world. With all that we do, from deep in our hearts, we cannot control all things. Life-threatening illnesses and disabilities affect far too many of our children each year. While we cannot change the circumstance, we can make dreams come true. Dreams to provide hope, to provide spiritual healing and strength, to provide moments of happiness and relief in the hardest of times. We can give a glimmer of light and hope in a time of darkness and despair. Join huntofalifetime.org to help make dreams come true, to provide hope for children with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Hunt of a Lifetime is a non-profit organization fulfilling dreams for hunting and fishing trips to youth 21 and under with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Visit huntofalifetime.org to learn how you can make a difference.
Hey, how'd the meeting go with Tommy's school counselor today?
Well, not exactly as planned. I think we need help.
Help? Why do we need help?
Well, I asked her about paying for college, and she said that's not something they do.
Maybe it is time to get some help. Even if Tommy just goes to state college, it's going to cost at least $25,000 a year. We'll have to rate our retirement and pay for Tommy's tuition. There's got to be a better way.
There is a better way. A way where you can pay less for college, or even receive college tuition free. regardless of your income or your students' grades. A way for you to keep your hard-earned income and savings for your future and spend less on college, while virtually eliminating the need for student loans. Get the facts about college admissions and tuition by going to tuitionprograms.org. That's tuitionprograms.org. tuitionprograms.org. Get the facts about college admissions and tuition by going to tuitionprograms.org.
Welcome back to America Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. You just heard from Eddie Nickens about that great jackrabbit hunt he enjoyed in Arizona. Now we're going to talk duck hunting, teal hunting, as a matter of fact, with Phil Bourgeli. He's the field editor for Field and Stream, and he also wrote a great article in the latest edition, the Great Escapes edition, that you really should check out at fieldandstream.com. Phil, great to have you back on the air.
Well, thank you for having me.
So I enjoyed your Great Escape because it wasn't an escape to another state in a whole huge adventure like Eddie Nickens had. Yours was literally a one-day getaway on a very special day, Thanksgiving. Now, I don't know about you. When I was a young man, I loved to go hunting on Thanksgiving Day, but then life happened. I got married, I had kids, and that changed for some reason. It sounds like you're in the same boat as me.
I am. I married a woman who comes from a totally non-hunting background. So while hunting on Christmas and Thanksgiving and the days around them were pretty common for me before I was married, and they're still common for a lot of my friends, she has totally different ideas about what men are supposed to do on, or hunters in general, are supposed to do on the holidays.
Right.
They are supposed to clean the house, peel potatoes, that kind of thing.
I know. It's so weird that our spouses would expect that of us on Thanksgiving Day. But you managed, though, to get away. Tell our listeners, number one, where you live and how you managed to get away for a quick teal hunt.
I live in Iowa, and it happened that my mother-in-law was coming in the day before Thanksgiving. This is actually the day before Thanksgiving that this hunt took place. But a day that I was slated to be doing domestic chores of various kinds. And one of those was the airport run to get my mother-in-law. It so happens that the highway to the airport goes across a reservoir that I frequently duck hunt. And on the way back, we passed a little inlet that I've hunted several times before that's right by the highway. And I glanced in there, and it was covered. It was covered with black dots, which I assumed first were coots. But I pulled over. I apologized to my mother. I said, I'm going to stop here for a minute. I need to take a look at these birds. And it was a bay full of green-winged teal, just packed full, hundreds of them. And I drove home pretty fast, but also thinking there wasn't really much chance I was going to get away to hunt these ducks. But I got home, and it turned out once we got my mother-in-law settled into her room, they said it was time. They needed to go out and buy yet more Thanksgiving groceries. And my wife takes a long time at the store, and her mother-in-law, I figured the two of them together might be out for a long time. And I could have just waited for them to leave and gone hunting, which would have made a better story, but I didn't. I said, I need to go duck hunting. I'll be back before you are, I promise. And she gave me that eye roll she gives me sometimes.
Right.
And they went off to the store, and I threw a gun and about 12 decoys and my waders in my car and tied a kayak at the top and headed back to the reservoir as fast as I could go and had just a spectacular teal hunt. I pulled over, and there was kind of a rip-rap wall. I had to pull the boat down and then towed it out. I usually with wooden paddle. I just tow it and then lie it in for a blind.
Sure.
Towed it out, and as I went, teal flushed by the hundreds in front of me.
Oh.
And swirled around and the way they do, and then sort of broke up into flocks and went streaming down the shore, and I knew they would be back. And by the time I'd thrown out a dozen decoys and gotten back in the boat, the ducks were coming back already. And it was a wonder I did, even though I was conscious at the time, I still wanted to make sure I shot all drakes, just because it looked so much prettier on the strap, and I did. And I remember they came back in twos and threes, and then, as I finished up after I shot my sixth bird, then they were coming back in flocks of 20 and 30 and 40, and it was, wheeling over me as I was picking up the decoys. And I gathered up my ducks and my decoys and my boat and dragged it back up the riprap wall and piled it in the car, and I was home with the ducks hanging on the back deck quite a while before the shoppers returned. So that was my escape, and it made not going hunting on Thanksgiving morning a lot easier to take, knowing I had this string of perfect green-winged ducks on the back porch.
Phil, that truly is a great escape in more ways than one. And talking to a person who loves to hunt teal, my earliest memories of duck hunting involved green-winged teal. And even today, my favorite opening day spot is a teal pond. And last year, me and my best friend and hunting partner of 40 years, we shot nothing but teal on opening day and absolutely loved it. And I'm with you. There's few birds that are better looking than a green-winged teal. And folks, if you haven't tried teal, they taste fantastic too. We've got to go. But again, if you want to check out this article from Phil and lots of other great ones in the Great Escapes edition, go to fieldandstream.com. It only costs $3.99 to read the whole magazine. It's just as high quality as those print magazines that Field and Stream used to publish, and I think you're going to really enjoy not just this story, but many others you'll find in there. Phil, thanks for sharing this with us today on America Outdoors Radio.
Thank you very much for having me.
You know, my very first shotgun that I had was a single shot 410, and I used it to shoot my first ducks, which were green-winged teal. Still remember that to this day. And the 410 shotgun, by the way, is also a really good firearm if you're hunting jackrabbits. I remember doing that as well as a young teenager. And if you're looking for a 410, whether it be a starter shotgun for your kid or maybe a lever action 410 that would be all sorts of fun for bunny hunting, check out the selection they have available from Henry Repeating Arms. Like all of their shotguns, these are made in America. They are accurate, they are rugged, they're reliable, and they have a lifetime satisfaction guarantee. You can see the lineup of shotguns, whether it be lever action or single shot, by going to henryusa.com, and you can find a dealer there, or if you have any questions, just talk to the award-winning customer service staff. They'll be happy to help you out. That website again is henryusa.com, and don't forget to ask for your free decals and catalog while you're there. All right, next on America Outdoors Radio, it's time for one of my favorite segments.
It's time to talk record fish.
From Field and Stream and Click on Detroit News, we learned that a 19-year-old Michigan angler fishing for salmon for the very first time not only broke a state record for Chinook salmon, but also reeled in the biggest salmon ever caught out of the Great Lakes on a hook and line. Luis Martinez was on a guided fishing trip with his family on Lake Michigan near Ludington last Saturday morning when all of this happened. The guide who took them was Captain Bobby Sullivan with Icebreaker Charters. They were trolling, and Luis was long-lining a Moonshine Lures Magnum spoon, raspberry carbon-colored, about 60 feet deep when he got a monster takedown on his rod. For the next 45 minutes, Luis fought this fish, which ran and jumped and put up a fight like no other fish Luis had hooked into before. Eventually, the huge Chinook salmon was brought into the boat, and knowing that they had a huge salmon, and seeing how big this fish was, Captain Sullivan headed to the marina to get it weighed. The 47.5-inch long salmon weighed an unbelievable 47.86 pounds, beating the previous Michigan State record of 46-plus pounds that had stood since 1978. Luis is going to be getting that fish mounted, and I am guessing this will not be his last salmon fishing trip either. Way to go, Luis, and well done, Captain Bobby Sullivan.
Congratulations on your new record.
We've got to start wrapping things up here, and if you didn't catch our whole show, don't worry. You'll be able to catch it in a few days when we upload it as a podcast. You can just look for America Outdoors Radio or America Outdoors Radio Podcast on your favorite platforms, and I hope you'll subscribe to the podcast as well. By the way, don't forget to like and follow our Facebook page too, because we've got a giveaway going on, and it's from Daredevil Lures. If you want to go after some trout or steelhead or maybe some pink salmon or coho, I think you're going to like what we're going to give away to one lucky listener. Check it out on our America Outdoors Radio Facebook page. It is the Daredevil Lure Giveaway, which includes not only some lures, but a little swag to go along with it. We are out of time, so until next time, here's hoping that you are blessed, and do remember this. It is your country and your outdoors, so get out there this summer and enjoy it.
Ready to step up to a quality-built rifle or shotgun that's a true classic? Check out Henry Repeating Arms, American-made. There's over 200 models to choose from in a variety of finishes and calibers for hunters and target shooters. Many of these are lever-action models with a look right out of the Old West. Don't be deceived, though. Henry Repeating Arms are modern, rugged, accurate, reliable, and have a lifetime guarantee. Find out more and order a free catalog today at henryusa.com. That's henryusa.com.